Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Jeff Mendelson, and this is the One Big Tip podcast. My guest today is Dani Beit-Or. Dani is a successful real estate investor, educator, and consultant. He has a background in engineering and high tech, but after graduating, he decided to pursue his passion in real estate investing. Since 2002, he has been actively involved in the U.S. real estate market, working with investors on their transactions in various markets across the country. During the 2008 market crash, he decided to start his own company called Simply Do It, where he has since helped over 3,500 investors with all aspects of the investing process. Danny is highly dedicated to learning and constantly improving his investing strategies to ensure his clients and students invest carefully and successfully. So this is going to be an excellent conversation today. I love talking real estate. Dani, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure, my friend. Thanks for inviting me. Love to be here.
I love it. So do me a favor, tell us a little bit about who you are and what makes you so amazing.
Well, I was born in Israel and grew up in Israel. Did the 3-year mandatory Israeli military service in special forces, and started my path as an engineer in Israel. The Israeli high tech. And as I was going through that, I just realized this is not the path I would like to take. It's A, boring, and B, I realized it's not going to put me on the path to financial, let's just say financial empowerment. I don't like the term freedom or all of that. So mostly I want to make sure I'm not putting a lot of hours in the Israeli high tech, benefiting some employer instead of putting those time and energy into my own life. That's how I started. That's how I kind of led me through finding real estate, US real estate, while living in Tel Aviv, Israel. Purchased my first house while in Tel Aviv in around 2002 in Phoenix, Arizona. And then in 2004, I decided I want to pursue this full time. I want to immerse myself in real estate. And I just packed the bags and my wife, and we took our suitcases and flew like good immigrants to the US, hoping everything will be fine. That was 19 years ago. And
I
here I
love it.
am.
I love these immigrant stories. My parents were immigrants to this country as well. And one of the interesting things about working during that heyday of startups and stock options and everyone just throwing all kinds of FU money at each other was that not everyone benefited from it, right? I was involved with at least 3 startups where I was promised stock options and all these kind of benefits, and none of them materialized. I couldn't do anything with those stock options because they ended up being, horrible ideas. So it's not something you can necessarily take to the bank. Some people, God bless them, they make a lot of money at it and they're blessed and, they help out their communities. But for others, it's time to do your own thing. So I really appreciate you articulating that. But tell me something. Uh, what was the main draw that brought you though into the real estate market? Was it just that because this isn't a get rich quick scheme, it's definitely something that you have to do work on. You have to build up your portfolio. And, especially for someone who comes from another country, it's not necessarily very intuitive to do. Right. There is a fair amount of training that goes into it. There are certain things you need to know. It's not impossible. Millions of people do it every day. But what was your reason for getting into it? And what would you say were some of the biggest challenges, especially when you were starting out so long ago, just to figure out the pieces on how to make it work for you?
Absolutely. And in a way, you already answered without even realizing exactly what drove me into real estate and maybe U.S. real estate. You mentioned the get rich quick kind of a scheme or plan. I didn't know. I had no idea. I still don't, by the way, how to get rich quick, right? I know some people have a magic formula or they're really good at it. I am not one of those people. But one thing I did realize at an early age is exactly that. I told myself, Danny, do you know how to get rich quick? I said, no. All right, how about you try and work on the other option, get rich slow? And that's why I wanted with pursue the get rich slow kind of a formula. Real estate, especially leverage real estate and long-term real estate fits into that model very well. And I love that the fact that it comes with a relatively relatively lower risk. So for me, the combination of long-term, get rich slow with leverage and with lower risk was the main draw to real estate. And when I looked at back then, around the early 2000s, at U.S. real estate versus the Israeli real estate, I could just see how the U.S. real estate is so much more attractive as someone who's investing with all the complexities and challenges. And many times I tell it to my clients from Israel. When you're investing in another country, you have, it's not about speaking English, it's about speaking American. That's two different things, right? People don't understand that. It's different time zone, which makes it more difficult. Laws, culture, regulation, how things are, structured or processed or streamlined, and people are involved in regulation. So different in so many ways. And it was very difficult at first to do it, remotely. I bought my first house completely sight unseen. Google was a startup. You mentioned it earlier. Google was a startup. We only had MapQuest, no Zillow, no all those public records. None of this was exist beyond just going on the map and looking where Phoenix was, right? I didn't even know where Phoenix was. In my mind, I knew somewhere in the Southwest, but that's about it. So I had to overcome all those obstacles or gaps. I like to call them those gaps in order to get to the point that I invest myself. And I did. There was a one point that I was researching. Probably the traditional analysis paralysis. And I remember asking myself, "Are you a talker, Dani, or a walker?" That's a conversation I had with myself after about a year and a half or so of just reading and trying to figure out and trying to make a decision and being fearful. And there was there's also no support system around you. In Israel back then, there were no real estate investment clubs. There's no Facebook groups, no groups, right? Nobody's doing it. I was very much, like a man on an island with maybe some other people are on islands around me, but I can't even see them. I can't find them. And not only that, people tell you, don't do it, you'll be cheated, all negative, right? A lot of advice from a lot of people, especially people who have no experience, but they are giving free advices all the time. So I had to overcome all those obstacles, all those challenges. I had to put the blinders here, the earplugs here, just to stay focused and get it done. Because otherwise,
I love that story because basically what happens is that you're right. When we started out doing all this stuff, we didn't have all these great tools that we have today. Right. And it makes it really interesting, to be able to utilize these tools. I mean, it went from, there's one main tool that you can use. Now there's 6. Right. And one of the things I find, just in my business and digital marketing, but also in real estate investing in general, is that, like you have like 5 or 6 different providers of data. Right. And all of them do about 80% of the same, they're in common. And it's usually that 20% that you don't know about or think that you need or don't need that is really the gotcha. And then trying to figure out which one of those tools are the ones that actually going to fit my mode and how I do it, and just understanding all that. Of course, you can go to the University of YouTube and binge on 150 hours worth of videos on it. But no, that is, almost a waste of a lot of people's time. Let's talk a little bit about your one big tip. And I love this tip because it's actually, it actually turns, the whole model on the head. You're not just, what a lot of people do is like, okay, I got the knowledge, so let me sell it. Right. And that's fine. But usually that, maybe, these coaches, they overvalue themselves. You don't necessarily know if their information that they're teaching is 5, 6 years old, that probably laws have changed since then, all kinds of, there are all kinds of pitfalls that you can get into when you're talking to coaches and you're trying to pick a mentor or pick a group that you can, that can help you out with. But one of the interesting things that you talk about is to actually teach. Don't just go and sell, just teach. Show people show people what you're doing and how to do it. How does that look in your world? How has that helped you, like starting up from being just an individual investor buying one or two homes to actually building a business where you now have, hundreds, if not thousands of students under your belt? How does that look?
The first thing I told myself when it comes to sales, when I kind of, after the crash of 2008, kind of resurrected or restructured my business, I told myself, Danny, there's one thing you're not good at, and that's sales, right? I don't think I'm a good salesperson. I don't think I'm a horrible one, but I don't think I'm a very good one. And I knew that I'm not the person who will cold call or telemarket, or it's just not me, right? Not my personality, not myself. How I would do, I would never last, and also I would probably give up very quickly on those methods. So I asked myself, what can I do differently that will help me propel my business? And the one thing I noticed over the years of being in the US is that when you are teaching, and when I am teaching or someone is teaching and standing in front of the room and sharing their knowledge and coming across not as sleazy salespeople, but truly authentic, knowledgeable, experience with flaws, right? Speaker or a reliable source of information, people gravitate to that. And for me, watching it from the side, the different events that I attended and few of the events that I've done myself, I was very attracted to that concept. And the one thing I've done is I started hosting events, free events, cost events. Obviously over time it transitioned more and more to online, and I would just be there in front of the room teaching. And I told myself, you will teach, people will see that you're knowledgeable, people will understand you're not trying to BS anyone, and they naturally will come and want to be attracted to working with you. And that's exactly what happened. So I had to turn the table. I knew that if I'm going to be in a power position, people who are going to want to come to the power in terms of, in the aspect of knowledge, people will come to me instead of me chasing them. And there's no better way to work with potential clients and clients when they are coming to you, want to work with you instead of you chasing them. That's completely the opposite how a traditional sales process works. And that works. I've been doing it for 20 years, right, or so. So mainly for the past 12, 13, 14 years is when everything accelerated even more. And that led me, still is the leading factor as a business owner. How do I turn the table? How do I attract people coming to me I'm not a chaser, right? If you don't want to work with me, I am not going to follow up and call. It's just not going to happen. Everything needs to come from you. That's the way I perceive it.
I love that story. There was one thing that comes to mind. I read from the first time I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And one of the most interesting passages in the book is he asks, what is the definition of an expert? Right. And everyone goes like, someone with a PhD, someone with this, someone with that, 10 years of experience, 5 years of experience. You're all wrong. Right. The definition of an expert is someone who knows 1% more than everyone else in the room. That's it. If you get up and you decide and you tell people with conviction, I know how to do this, here's how to do it, step 1, 2, 3, that's it. You're the expert. Boom. Yeah. And what happens is that is so true. Right. Yeah. And it also, it also creates this aura, it creates this confidence for us to get up and talk to other people in order to help them. And that confidence becomes infectious. Right? Not just for stroking your own ego, but for helping out other people as well. One of the cool things, one of the greatest deeds that we can do in this world is not just to give someone money, but to actually teach someone how to fish. Right. Absolutely. And that is so powerful.
Absolutely. Agree.
Tell me a little bit about, like when you have a student come in, let's say, for example, they have little to no experience in this. How do you help them through it? Is it through more online videos? Is it one-on-one? What are some of the modalities that you use in order to help people, achieve this success and, get the right training under their belt?
So the way we operate, differentiate my business versus, some online academy, is that we are very much execution oriented, and we have a lot of systems and processes in place. So I have, before I had my first client, I already had the CRM, I already had, initial systems and processes in place, and there was not a single client who were already walking those steps, right? of course, over the years, I've improved and improved and nonstop, right? I am improving as we speak. I'm doing some improvements, right? So that never stops. But I always thought from day one, not how will just I'm going to get the first client. What is the client experience going to look like? Experience in terms of the journey that I'm going to walk them through. So we do a lot of handholding in the process. Part of that handholding is, on us, the way we handle the client. Some of the handholding is how the teams that we bring, carefully vet and train teams, bring into our ecosystem, do part of that, handholding. So there's a lot of one-on-one how we go about it. It's not an automated process. I know it's, there's limitation of scalability, but the people who come to us, they need that level of handholding. Someone needs really hugging. Someone needs to just to know that I'm in the area to ask me a question. So it's a scale, right? Not everybody is exactly the same in terms of how much handholding, but I've had people that I feel like we're hugging through the process. For example, should I sign the document with a blue pen or a black pen, right? Even that question, came up. Like, luckily, very rarely, but it did come up.
What's interesting? I remember getting those kind of questions as well. And you almost want to call it. At first you want to like, God, why am I sitting here answering these elementary questions, right? But there actually is a thought process behind them, right? It's like people want to do good. I remember when I first got my real estate, my mortgage broker license. Didn't get the real estate one. I got a mortgage broker license. My first deal, right? I went to a broker, got signed up under them, and I'm like, okay, he's like, okay, go out and go find something. My first deal was my brother's refinance, right? You can't lose. Like, my brother's not going to say no, right? Interest rates were already dipping down. It was like, it was in the bag. I managed to mess that thing up at least 4 or 5 times. I had to go back multiple times just to get the contract signed. Yeah. And it was like, oh my God, like there is a fair level of detail that goes on over here, especially when you're talking about 6-7 figures worth of, worth of transactions. You don't want to mess this up, which is why having a coach is so important, right? Yeah. You want to have someone by your side. Again, you can go to the university YouTube and you can look all this stuff up, but how do you know that you're getting the right stuff? And how do you know that this person's teaching, actual up-to-date things? Yeah. So Dani, thank you so much for sharing that. One last thing I wanted to ask you though, what are some of the wins that you've gotten for some of your students, your clients? Like, how does, once they go through your process, they go through your training, what are some of the really cool things you've seen your students do afterwards?
I think what I love to see most is, I work with a lot of individuals and couples, and when they are coming first, they're full from this process, from buying remotely. Many of them, most of my clients don't even see their house ever. They're never going to see their house. It's all done 100% remotely, although they definitely can go and see. They choose not to, right? For whatever reason. And what I love seeing is about 2 years in, after they purchase their first 1 or 2 properties, it's a big aha moment, because all of a sudden, 2 years in, they get to really comprehend or process or internalize what has been done, what has been accomplished financially in the past 2 years, because 2 years show like 1 or 2 properties have appreciated a little bit, and the mortgage balance, kind of reduced a little bit, and the cash flow, add up. All of a sudden, in the background of their lives, while having jobs, while having kids, while doing life, they've been able to accumulate $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 pretty passively, right? I'm saying pretty passively because it's not buy and forget. This is not 100% passive, but relatively to the amount of time and energy that they put in, this has been accomplished. And I always ask them, how long does it take you to save, not to earn, to save $40,000 in your life, right? And that's a good question for people to kind of think about, because many of us earn well, but saving 40,000, I'm just using that number, is very challenging. And what happens in those 2 years, although it's almost always like in that 2-year mark, they're like, what the heck had just happened here? Kind of in the background of my life. And now what happens to them is they are re-strategizing consciously or subconsciously their life finances, right? Their full life finances, saying, if this is what happened in 2 years, I need more of this, because where else can I get that in the background of my life without making a little, too much effort? And then I see them coming and say, okay, now I really get it, because I see what financially was accomplished. I want more. I want more. I want more. And many times, 5, 7, 8, 10 years later, they're saying, I should have bought more. I should have started earlier, right? That's almost always the mantra that keeps repeating itself.
I love it. Dani, thank you so much for sharing that. Can you please let everyone know how they can learn more about your company, and how can they reach out to you directly?
So Jeff, my web identity is Simply Do It. Simply Do It. This is you write Simply Do It on real estate, Dani online. You will either hit our Facebook page, our YouTube page, our website. So no problem. Just remember Simply Do It. That'll be the easiest way to go about it. Our website is simplydoit.net. Simplydoit.net. You're most welcome to reach out and ask for advice. We also sometimes work with business owners in real estate that are seeking advice on the operation of the business and not necessarily the actual investing. So I think this is more relevant for your audience.
Amazing. Dani, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you breaking down these concepts for us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.